Real quick, just wanted to cover pretty much how we do process automation or task automation. Um, so yeah, basically we cover our two biggest factors, so inputs and outputs, and then we go and create the process from there. So what you want to do when you're writing out a system is create a list of outputs that you need from that. So don't just think about the output as being one big thing, but if like the easiest and most efficient way to do it is to think about it in terms of being smaller sub outputs. So normally what we do is we have like one thing, one task, which is the output, and then we have multiple smaller things that make up that big output. So in order to get the output as well, we have inputs. So we need to these are our it's like I/O. It's kind of very computer or electricity based thinking, but it's inputs and outputs, and then the bit in the middle is actually like it's kind of like a transformer really, where you're transforming the data from input and you go into the output. Now, most people when they think about tasks, they don't think about the inputs and the outputs; they just do them. So, like as an example, if you have to do an audit or a report for somebody, there are inputs for that report and there are outputs for that report. And that does not really change as such per person. The only thing that changes is the input, and the output's different because of the change of the input. But the bit in the middle is really the same. So how we think about it from that point of view is we define our required fields, a format, who the consumer is going to be, as well as some kind of acceptance criteria. So clearly define outputs. And then we have our sources, formats, who owns the input, and validation of the input rules. So very simple, but also keeping things in line with, um, your normal process. So with the report writing, you've got inputs. So could be client name, could be client job data, could be anything like that you would use to actually create the report. And the output report is actually a little bit of those inputs transformed to be outputs. Now, that could be like the PDF with the client name in it at the top, and then their address and like the scope of works, and then at the bottom you might have inputs like data points from a scan or from some kind of measurement, or if it was a report on someone's knee or somebody's like a health report, you would grab all of the client's health markers or data, and then you would transform that into a table, or could be a database driven report where you've got charts and little tables and all kinds of visual stuff as a kind of output from that input data, so that the client can visualize what's happening in their body in that case, or what's happening to their equipment, or however that would work for you. But yeah, so we pretty much have a big transformer in the middle which transforms that data. So the next thing that we do once we have our inputs and outputs is we define what the task is. So in this case, if is it report writing? Is it one big report? Is it emails? Is it newsletters? Is it a marketing campaign? Like it doesn't really matter as such what that is, but we need to clearly define what the task is and how we would best go about actually correctly developing that system. So what happens in the case of like a report is, okay, we have each like reports normally have more than one section, but basically we could break up each section into subsections and then have inputs for each section with outputs for each section, which like makes it much simpler. So this is we do this because when we go to AI using, or when we outsource our systems, they're well documented and they're super simple to get our heads around. The other thing is, how do we do it? So this is kind of where this is like the step where you have your transformer written down. So you have your input data, which you have to turn into your output data. So in this case, if you wanted that we go back to the example of the report, you would have to have a system where you take client name, client data, data points, and then transform that information, however you would do it, into an output. So if you have a table, a spreadsheet table, and you have to make charts, you would just say, well, we take cell X, cell Y, or the range of data that you want to use, transform that into a chart, and then paste it in the document. So that's one. That's kind of one system. And then you have a thing where it's like, given all of this data, normally I would create some kind of judgment on what my software is actually doing, and then I would that's system two. So your summary or your overall verdict of the work is another system. So you're breaking that down into smaller subsystems of a larger, bigger system. And once you do that, you have your output. So we have to stitch together these smaller systems, so that what we actually have is a bunch of subsystems which create a bigger system. So with the report writing, if it had five sections to it, each section would have dynamic parts where you would basically get the AI or get somebody else to do those sections individually and then paste them in, and that final product would be a culmination of the 5 subsystems. That's quite a simple way to think about it. And then the result of that is a product. So you have your final product output, whether that's a newsletter or a report. The output or whatever you're trying to do doesn't change, but the principle is that you're breaking it down into a smaller subsystem. And I'll do an example at a later date of a real life example of this to make it super simple, because it can seem really daunting for a lot of people, and a lot of business people that I work with. It's quite daunting to do system stuff, especially when you've got these big Franken systems that absolutely take over your business and actually become a bottleneck later on. Something that I work with quite often at Graaz Software Automation is a lot of big systems that have just been like, the company's outgrown them and they're now holding people back. And this is something that we really enjoy doing over at Graaz. And then ultimately, once you've dialed in that product output, you have happy customers, happy clients, however you refer to that. But the principle is the same. It's that an output product is good. It happens once you systematize it, and you can actually outsource a lot of the process work to AIs or to machine learning systems. You get faster results, which means you can serve more customers, do more with your company, more with your time, and spend less actual human resource on the actual task itself, which sounds like we're taking jobs away from people, but to be honest with you, it's more about making the people that you have already more productive and allowing you to serve a bigger customer base in a shorter time frame. That's really what that's about. But ultimately, that's part of the game, and that's the way the world's going. So if you're not doing this and you want to learn how to do this, or you want to get this done, send me a message or go to my website and send me a link, and we'll get this sorted out. I'd love to help any business get this sorted or get their head around the process. They can do it themselves. I do enjoy that. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.